Hello and welcome to my guide on everything about inheritance for Umamusume. This one's going to be quite a doozy, and I would advise for you to become more familiar with the game before deciding to kind of tackle this topic. I have two beginner guides on my channel right now. They're doing very well, so please go ahead and check them out. Make sure to use the timestamps both for those videos and this video as well to get to whatever questions you have. In this video, we're going to cover everything about inheritance. We're going to be covering what are legacy Umas, what is affinity, what is inspiration, what are sparks, what are the desirable sparks, and how to farm desirable sparks and affinity. In other words, we're going to be learning how to create the perfect parent, the super mommy, if you will. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So first, a disclaimer. We are using 3 English sources. These are all going to be linked in the description. Most of these findings are estimated and inferred from amassed user-submitted testimony. So there's not a lot of data mining for Umamusume. I don't know why, I don't know how, but it's mostly from user-submitted statistics. And so you might find that there are some inconsistencies or just flat out some things that may be wrong. However, Umamusume is a game that is about 4 years old now. There are a couple of really big patches that do change the game, and we are on an older version. Until we do catch up, there might be a few things that are less than true. Some of this information may be overdated based off a later version. And finally, a reminder to like and subscribe if you guys want more Umamusume content, if this helped you out at all, and comment if you guys have any corrections. And if there are any corrections, I will make sure to pin them in the comment below, so check that out as well. All right, so first, some terminology. We're going to be using the terminology from the official game. If you refer to those documents, they are going to use different terminology, so keep that in mind. We're going to be talking about legacy Umas. So what are legacy Umas? Legacy Umas are veteran Umas, so Umas that have completed a career, whether they have passed or failed, that are assigned to a trainee Uma to pass down sparks. So if I bring up my game over here, this Uma, the first one that I select, so if I go to like here, I click next, I click one of them. This Uma is the trainee, and these are their legacy Umas. So let's say this one and that one. Over here, these are the trainees' sub-legacy Umas. In other words, grandparents. So if the legacy Umas are basically parents, then these sub-legacies are the grandparents. And also, these Umas are legacy Umas to this Uma. Throughout this video, I'm going to be referring to the collection, like all of these Umas, whether they are legacy or sub-legacy, as the ancestral Umas to a trainee. So a trainee Uma will inherit sparks from 2 legacy Umas and 4 sub-legacy Umas all combined. So the first thing to notice about this legacy selection screen are the initial bonuses. So you can see over here that, let me go ahead and reset this. I'll pick one Umamusume here. That's Daiwa Scarlet. You can see over here that we have some initial bonuses that include +5 in speed, +5 in stamina, and +5 in power. If I remove Daiwa Scarlet, the values revert back to the original, the base values for Maruzensky. Any legacy Uma comes with 3 blue sparks, its own and its legacy Umas. You can see that on the right hand side over here. The blue sparks are stat bonuses. It tells you the stat, and it tells you what bonus you'll get from that spark. So 1 star gives +5 in any stat, 2 stars gives +12, and 3 stars gives +21. Your trainee will inherit the sum of all blue spark values as initial stat bonuses. So if I go ahead and use, like, let's say over here, this Daiwa Scarlet who has a 3 star in speed, and let's go ahead and do this one for Vodka, you can see that we have a +33 in speed and a +45 in speed. Why we have +33 for Daiwa is because she herself has 3 stars in a speed spark, but also has a legacy Uma of her own that has 2 stars in the speed spark. Aptitude bonuses come from pink sparks. So these are the aptitude bonuses. You'll see front runner, you'll see front runner over here, which is kind of cool. We also have medium, we have the distance. Any one of the affinities, which are over here on this section, your trainee's aptitudes will sum up all the pink spark stars for each aptitude then change their aptitude according to the following table. So if I look at this example over here, right, we see that front runner has 2 stars here and front runner has 2 stars here. Let me pick a different trainee right here. I'll pick Gold Ship. Gold Ship right now has G rating for front running as a style of racing. If I pick that Daiwa Scarlet from earlier, you'll see that that G rating goes up by 2 grades. So FE, right? That's 2 ratings. The reason why is because it follows this table. We see over here, Gold Ship started with G, and because there are a total of 4 stars from the pink spark for front running, it upgraded twice. It upgraded to E. So what this table shows you is how high you can get a certain aptitude rating based off the number of red sparks. And notice that this table does say gene. The genes are sparks. So Gold Ship, as a front runner, can only go to a maximum of C rating for front running at the start of the run, at the very start of the run. There are ways we could boost it even further, but at the start of the run, can only get up to C rating. And that's if they have 10 or more of that pink spark in total sum of stars. Notice also in this table that you cannot go above A rating at the start of your career. You can go to S rating in your aptitudes, but that's only during the run, during an inspiration event, which we'll cover later. So before we talk about sparks, it's really important to also talk about, like, what do these aptitudes do? What do they mean? Well, there are 3 types of aptitudes, right? If I take a look over here, there's track, there's distance, and there's style. So over here, it's called surface, distance, and strategy. So if you take a look at this table, right, you could see that if I have an S rating in surface, I get a plus 5% boost to my stats. If I have an S rating anywhere, it's plus 5%, except if I do strategy, it's plus 10%. If I'm at A rating, it's baseline, right? A rating is baseline. A rating means you suffer no penalties. However, everything below A rating means you'll start to suffer pretty dramatic penalties to your Umamusume stats when they decide to run either on that surface or that distance track or using a different style. It is very important to know, and this is what I see a lot of guide makers get wrong, is that these aptitudes do not imply a universal stat decrease. They don't affect all your stats. In fact, each type of aptitude affects a specific stat for the Umamusume. So what is that? Well, the surface type, or otherwise known as the track type, affects acceleration. Okay, it does not affect power because power affects like lane changing and other stuff as well as acceleration, but surface type specifically affects acceleration. That's pretty important. So you don't really want Haru Urara to run on turf because having 0 acceleration, especially as Haru Urara, who is a late surger or an end closer, Haru Urara will not be able to accelerate and overtake other people nearly as well as if she was running on a dirt track. The distance type aptitude will affect speed, which is very dramatic and obviously very important to maintain at an A rating or above. If you have E or lower rating, then it will also affect acceleration significantly. These style aptitudes will affect wit, and wit affects not only skill activation rate, but it also affects the resistance to being rushed. And being rushed essentially means that your Umamusume will abandon their strategy and maybe try and push up further. And what happens is they'll consume stamina at a 60% more additional rate. So knowing that style aptitudes only affect wit makes it so that changing the style or changing the strategy before the race starts actually doesn't affect too much. And in fact, according to the Umamusume reference doc, in practice, the game doesn't actually change your skill activation rate based on the affected wit. This is important to know if you're having trouble during a career run. If your stats are built in a different way, then you can change your strategy, your style of running, and maybe have a better result. The next thing I want to talk about is inspiration. So what are inspiration? Inspiration events always happens 3 times during a career. Now, not a lot of people count the first inspiration as an inspiration event because it happens at the start of the run, first of all. And secondly, its results are already known. if I have these two Umamusume over here, I already know exactly what I'm going to get from that inspiration event. I'm going to get plus 33 speed, plus 12 power, plus 10 more speed, plus 5 more wit, and as well get whatever sparks to improve these aptitudes the way they do. I will also get any of the green sparks, but only from the direct legacy Umas, so not the sub legacy. So I will not get Sky High Teo's Step as gold chip. I will get Red Shift LP because this Maruzenski has it as one of her green skills. The other times inspiration events happen is during the classic year, early April. Classic year is the second year, and the senior year, early April. So always the same month, but on the second and third year. Inspiration events are either normal or gold versions. Okay, so this is what a golden inspiration event looks like. Wow, that's quite a bit. Okay, that's what a golden inspiration event looks like with really good parents. It could also be a lot less exciting. And this is a regular inspiration event. Gold inspiration events has a flat chance of occurring about 20%, and Affinity supposedly increases the chance of golden inspiration events. We'll talk more about Affinity later, but it's this part of the screen over here where it shows a circle, a triangle, or double circles. This is what a double circle Affinity would look like. Golden inspiration, no, not Affinity, but golden inspiration, raises your overall chances of inheriting more sparks than usual during the run, not at the initial start, but during and mid-career, but does not guarantee any certain amount. So more on inspiration events. The chance to inherit blue sparks increases depending on affinity. So a double circle affinity will give 6 blue sparks, while circle affinity will give 4 to 6 blue sparks. There's no English source that has data on running triangle affinities. You always want to avoid triangle affinities. The chance for inheriting each spark, so again, any one of these things over here are sparks. The chance for inheriting each of them is estimated to be 5% per star rating. And that's just for the Legacy Uma. So this vodka has a 15% chance to inherit this speed rating mid-career, not the initial start. Remember, the initial start is guaranteed. But mid-career, during one of the inspiration events, she has a 15% chance of inheriting this spark. She has a 5% chance of inheriting this spark. And when it comes to sub-legacies, so the grandparents, that chance is halved. So this should be 10% divided by 2, which is 5% to inherit this power spark from her sub-legacy of Maruzenski, and 10% divided by 2 for a total of 5% for this speed one. The chance to inherit each spark is increased during a golden inspiration event. We don't really know how much, but we just know that the chance is increased. So now we're going to be talking about what happens during the inspiration event, specifically for each color of spark. If you're inheriting a blue spark, if it's 1 star, it can give anywhere between 1 to 10 of that stat. 2 stars is 1 through 16, and 3 stars is 1 through 28. You can have a low roll or a very high roll. No matter the stars, low rolls are possible. When it comes to inheriting pink sparks or the aptitude sparks, this is the only way to get S rating on any aptitude. You can see I have an S rating for medium distance tracks. That's a 5% boost to my speed stat when Maruzenski is running the medium distance tracks. There is a hidden value system for pink sparks if you're really wanting to get into the weeds of it. When it comes to inheriting green sparks, so green sparks are going to look like this one. When it comes to inheriting green sparks are the unique skills for the Umamusume. And when you inherit green sparks, you can get anywhere between +1 to +3 skill hint levels. The more skill hint levels you have, the cheaper it is to learn that skill. So if I wanted to look at that over here, you could see that over here that I have skill hints that are level 2, or skill hints that are level 3. So you need to have the skill hint first to be able to learn the skill, and then every hint level above that is going to improve the discount by 10%. Whenever you start a career, trainees will always obtain their direct legacy Umas, 1 or 2, green sparks at the start of the career. So if I started this run with Vodka, with Martezensky as her legacy, and let's say I wanted to also include, I have to include another 3-star like Simboli Rudolph, then Vodka will inherit from the first inspiration event, the one at the very beginning of the run, Martezensky's Redshift, and Simboli Rudolph's Behold Thine Emperor's Divine Might. Vodka will not inherit the Triumphant Pulse at the very start of the run. They have a chance to inherit that green spark during the run, but from any sub-legacies, green sparks cannot be inherited at the start of the run. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about inheriting white sparks. So what are white sparks? There are 3 different types of white sparks. There are the race white sparks, the G1 race white sparks. So something like Osaka High, right? Or Takarazuka Kinen. There are also skill hint white sparks. So corner recovery is one of them. Hydrate is one of them over here. And finally, there are scenario white sparks. So the only one I believe in this game right now is the URA finale scenario white spark. Now, scenario sparks give 2 major stat bonuses. You could get plus 10, plus 20, or plus 30 per individual stat. So if I look at the URA finale, it says it increases speed and stamina. To inherit white sparks, it has to be during the run. So if she inherits this white spark will give anywhere between 10, 20, or 30 speed, and then 10, 20, or 30 stamina. You might be wondering then, why would you want a higher star rating for this white spark? The reason why, again, is because the chance of inheriting each spark goes up by 5% per star rating. The other type of sparks, the G1 race sparks, they give either 1 stat and 1 skill hint, or 2 stats. And the stat boosts are plus 3, plus 6, or plus 9. So the G1 race sparks don't really give that many stats. And finally, you have the skill sparks, and these only give skill hint levels. And we'll talk about how to get all of these sparks. Skill hints from white sparks will give anywhere between plus 1 to plus 5 skill hint levels. Now you might be wondering, how do you farm these sparks? How do you get blue sparks? How do you get pink sparks? So at the end of any career, 1 stat will be picked among the 5. So it's 20% chance to get your desired 1 stat. And following that, a roll will determine what star version it is. If the stat is less than 600, then it's 90% chance you'll get a 1-star blue spark for that stat. And it'll be 10% chance for a 2-star. If you have anywhere between 600 to 1100, then it's 50% for 1-star, 45% for 2-star, 5% for 3-star. If it's over 1100, then it's 20% for 1-star, 70% for 2-star, and 10% for 3-star for that one specific stat. Now, no, it says 1100 over here. I think I got that from the reference doc. That might be accurate to the Japanese later version. From what I remember, it was per 600 stats. So 1200 was that threshold. But long story short, if you have 600 points in your desired stat, it's a total 1% chance to generate a 3-star spark for that one specific stat. And if you have 1200 in a stat, then it's a 2% chance. So it's pretty hard to get a 3-star blue spark. But as you'll learn later, that is probably one of the most desirable outcomes, especially for a beginning player. Now, you might be wondering, how do you get the pink sparks? How do you get the aptitude sparks? And that's an important question, okay? Why is it an important question? Because if I wanted to raise a dirt running Umamusume, so a dirt running Umamusume would traditionally be, let's say I wanted El Condor Pasa, but with an A rating in dirt, so that I could use her in my PvP team and have her run dirt races instead of Haru Urara. Well, if I wanted to do that, then very likely what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to train Haru Urara and finish a run where her pink spark that is assigned just happens to be dirt. And as you'll learn in this version of the game, that's currently the only way to get a pink spark with dirt. Pink sparks have a chance to generate once for any aptitude with grade A or higher. Note that if you have an S grade, that does not influence the following rating. So you have a 20% chance to get 1-star, 70% chance to get 2 stars, and 10% chance to get 3-star in any one aptitude. So essentially, if I wanted to raise a Haru Urara as a legacy Uma, that I'm aiming to have a dirt pink spark, then what I have to do is I have to make sure that whatever pink sparks that Haru Urara inherits, I don't want it to improve her mile aptitude or her end aptitude, because that will dilute the chances of me getting a dirt pink spark. What the game does is it looks at all of your A or above aptitude ratings, and then it chooses from one of them, then it determines the star rating. So if you look at someone like Simply Rudolph, it's very difficult to get any one specific pink aptitude spark, because she has 5 different aptitudes that can roll and turn into a pink spark. Now you might be wondering, how do you get a green spark? Well, a green spark will always and only be generated if you have a 3-star Uma. So if a 3-star Uma is completing their run, then they will always generate a green spark. You can see that pretty easily here. Let's say I pick Haru Urara and I take a look at all my available legacy Umas. You can see that all my Maruzenskis, no matter what, has a green spark. You could even see it over there if you really look. Green spark, she has a green spark. But any one of my other horse girls don't have green sparks because Daiwa Scarlet is a 2-star, El Condor Pasa is a 2-star, Sakura Bakshino is a 1-star. Now, if you'll notice over here on this version of Maruzensky, this particular veteran Uma, I have a level 4 version of Redshift over here. How did I get level 4, you might ask? There are certain events during a career that will improve the level of your Umamusume's unique skill, and it will improve its sort of potency and ability to do things. So like over here, this Redshift, it increases acceleration. Now it'll increase the acceleration according to whatever that level 4 value is. One of the ways to improve your skill level is by making sure you have 60 friendship with Director Akikawa before a certain time during the career run. I don't know what exactly that time is off the top of my head, but just know that usually when your Umamusume is doing very well or winning a lot of races, they will run into a lot of events where they will improve their skill level. And with improved skill levels, there is a higher chance a green spark with more stars is generated. You can also improve the base level of this unique skill by improving the star rating. Notice green sparks cannot be generated from learning inherited versions of unique skills. First of all, inherited versions of unique skills are sort of lesser versions of those skills. So if I look at this Daiwa Scarlet actually has Redshift LP 1211, and it's the same name, right? However, this is a reduced version of that skill, and this skill will not generate a green spark. You could see with Daiwa Scarlet's version over here, it says slightly increased acceleration. However, if I look at Maruzensky's over here, that's level 2, it says increase acceleration with no slightly. It's just increase. Now you might be wondering, how do you get white sparks but the skill ones, right? And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking specifically about front runner savvy. I'm talking like lay low. These kind of sparks that give skill hints. How do you get these? Well, you get them by learning the skill. The Uma has to learn the skill in order to have this as their white spark. But that's not all. The more ancestral Umas that know the skill or have the skill spark, the higher chance it has to produce that skill spark. All white sparks have a flat 5% chance for that spark to be 3 stars. All of them, even the G1 race sparks, the white skill sparks, or the white scenario sparks. Remember that white sparks have 3 types. Learned skills have anywhere between 20 to 30% chance to generate a skill spark, and that value scales with how many ancestral Umas have learned that skill. It's important to note that gold skills do not generate sparks for gold skills. So for example, this Maruzensky Swinging Maestro, there is no white spark that gives the skill hint for Swinging Maestro. Swinging Maestro, being a gold skill, has a lesser version of it, and that lesser version is Corner Recovery. So you see this Maruzensky, she has a white spark for Corner Recovery. She doesn't have a white spark for Swinging Maestro. She has the white spark for its corresponding lesser version. Now you might be thinking then, if I was to raise an Umamusume specifically so that it would contain that white spark, why would I learn Swinging Maestro? Why wouldn't I just learn Corner Recovery and save myself the skill points? The reason why is because learning the golden skill increases the chance for that white spark to generate from 20 to 30% up to 40 to 70%. Additionally, certain skills have multiple levels. So for instance, this right-headed over here, it has a double circle version and it has a one circle version. Single circles have a 20-25% chance to generate that spark, and double circles have anywhere between 25 to 30% chance to generate that spark. And it looks like the spark that it's talking about is the baseline circle version of it, not the double circle version of it. So the next question is, how do you get white G1 race sparks? Well, you get these white sparks by winning a G1 race. You have to get first place, so it's not enough to clear the goal. It doesn't matter if your Umamusume has a goal to just reach top 5 or reach top 3. You have to get first place. And that will allow the trainee a chance to generate a G1 race spark. The chance to generate that G1 race spark scales from 20 to 30% by the following factors: how many ancestral Umas have also won that G1 race, and how many ancestral Umas have that G1 race spark. Alright, let's finally talk about affinity. So affinity comes in 3 grades: the double circle, the circle, and the triangle. Trainee Umas have a mutual affinity rating with each specific Uma. This is actually determined largely by groups and intersections of groups. So expect Umas like A and B, or Daiwa and Vodka, who have very high affinity ratings with one another, to mutually share relatively high affinity ratings with another Umamusume. Kind of similar, it's within that same range. Later on in the game's lifecycle, we will get alternate versions and outfits for the Umamusume. They will be counted as different characters in some respects. They'll have different unique skills, different skills that they start with the skill hints for. As well, they will have different growth rates, but they still count as the same character when it comes to things like affinity. Or if you were making a PvP team, you can't have all 5 different outfits of Special Week or something like that. Now, so there's a baseline affinity rating that's mutual, but a trainee's affinity with a Legacy Uma is increased by +1 with its Legacy Uma. So basically, if you share G1, G2, G3 race wins, you'll get more boosts to the rating. Now, you could see what races your Uma has won by looking at their career info and simply scrolling down and seeing their career. I have a G1 here, Yasuda Kinen, Osaka High, Arima Kinen. You could see for a horse like Haruurara, for example, you have OP classes of races, and these do not count. They're not G1, G2, or G3. Also, winning a triple crown or triple tiara set of races will give +1 extra point. So these are the lists of the triple crowns. Note that if I construct a legacy tree, and let's say I have Vodka as a sub-legacy to the trainee Vodka, you can see that I'm getting 0 from sub-legacy 1-1 because there's a repeat. This is entirely possible, and this is something you should avoid if you're looking to boost your affinity ratings. So in order to get double circle affinity rating, you need to have over 150 affinity rating across your entire tree. Circle means having a over 50 affinity rating, and triangle means having lower than 50. So if I look at over here, let's say I was raising Vodka and I pick her worst ones like Haruurara. Let's pick another one over here, winning ticket. It's pretty hard to get less than 50, but this is one way you could get less than 50. So it takes affinity rating from every one of the ancestral Umas and sums up the total and needs to reach a certain value. If I just got one more value, I would get a circle. Probably the biggest mistake of this affinity tree is having a repeat in the sub-legacy. So you want this to be usually someone else, right? And that's enough to get it to circle. So it's pretty hard to mess this up. Note that repeats across the tree don't matter. Repeats from the trainee specifically will zero out the affinity rating they gain from it. Now you might be wondering what the best method for gaining affinity is, or boosting affinity rating, once we get caught up with the JP version. But for now, the best way to get affinity rating is by constructing an affinity loop. In order to construct an affinity loop, you need 4 unique Umas minimum. Uma A can be parented by B and C, Uma B can be parented by C and D, and Uma C will be parented by B and D. So it would look like something like this, right? So you can see we got a great affinity rating, Daiwa Scarlet. You can see that there are repeats across the tree, but again, that does not matter. What only matters is if Daiwa Scarlet appeared in her ancestral line, then she will get 0 affinity rating from that Daiwa Scarlet. Note that some Umas like Maruzensky may have a near impossible time, at launch anyway, of reaching max affinity, even with 6 unique Umas. While others like Daiwa Scarlet over here have a lot of ways to reach great affinity with just 4 different unique Umas. So this is what the affinity loop would look like. It's best visualized as a line that loops on itself. So you would start with training like Grass Wonder, for instance, with Vodka and Daiwa Scarlet as the legacy. Those sub-legacies don't matter when you're just starting, obviously, because the sub-legacies will eventually be breeded out, right? After you get your desired Grass Wonder, you'll move on to train your El Condor Pasa using your previously trained Grass Wonder and the Daiwa Scarlet that was the legacy Uma for Grass Wonder. You'll move across the loop back to Vodka, back to Daiwa Scarlet, and then if you wanted a better Grass Wonder, you'll continue on this loop. Affinity looping will be outdated by the 2.0 anniversary patch, and essentially the best way to get more affinity is by spamming G1 race wins and having so many mutual G1 race wins between the legacy and its sub-legacies. So this all brings us to the final question. How do you create the super mommy? So here is an example of a super mommy. It doesn't even fit in one page, the amount of sparks this one horse girl has. So the question is, what should you aim for? Well, 3-star blue sparks are often regarded as the most important. For making a legacy Uma, remember, so you're making the parent, you want a total of 9 stars between its blue spark and its parents. So if I'm looking at an example over here, I don't have an example of a 9-star right now. It's gonna take a while to find one, but this one is my Daiwa Scarlet. She has 3-star for speed. She has 2-star of her legacy Uma for power, and Daiwa Scarlet's legacy Uma has 2-star in speed. Ideally, what I would be doing is I'll raise this Vodka to also have 3 stars, and next I'll raise a different Uma with Daiwa Scarlet and that 3-star Vodka I make, so that I can have a legacy Uma that has a total of 9 stars across itself and its legacy Uma. Which ones are the best blue sparks to get? Stamina and power are the most popular in order to mitigate training stamina and power. The fact is that speed is almost always heavily focused on any career run, and so you don't really need extra help in speed. You don't need any initial boost in speed. Ideally, you're training speed so that you can level up the speed training. Having any blue sparks with guts and wit is just not considered as valuable. Distance-based pink sparks are the most valuable because they affect speed, but surface-based sparks are also good because they affect acceleration. Surface being track type, turf or dirt. The most desirable white spark is the URA Finale spark. If you could get a 3-star version of the URA Finale spark, that's also pretty good. It provides the most stats. Remember that it provides 2 stats, and these 2 stats can either be plus 10, plus 20, or plus 30 individually. The other thing you should aim for is to win as many G1 races as possible in order to farm as many G1 race sparks. So now we come to the TLDR section where I tell you what exactly you need to do, the short version of it, in order to make a good parent Umamusume. The main priority is to raise the desired stat to 600 at least for a chance to get a 3-star blue spark. You also want to win the URA Finale tournament for the best white spark. The extra credit will be to win as many G1 races as possible for more white sparks and boosted affinity ratings. This isn't very easy to do, especially for new players, and takes a lot of trial and error and experience with raising specific Umas at launch. Later on, it will be a lot easier to farm G1 race wins because it's going to be a lot easier to raise certain stats with the different scenarios. You probably also want to spend skill points and save them for the end of the run to have as much control over which skill you're learning, and so which white spark you'll be generating. Again, this is pretty hard to do if you're barely scraping by winning. Winning URA, you have to remember, is the most important thing. So learn skills if you are running into consistent failed runs before the races happen and not at the end of the run. And personally, I wouldn't worry too much about trying to get high affinity ratings unless you're playing something like Daiwa Scarlet. Then it's kind of easy, right? Because Daiwa Scarlet's free, vodka is free. First thing I think everyone should want to do is to make a 9-star blue spark Uma with desirable stats. This makes clearing URA easier, as well as it allows you to farm G1 race wins a lot easier. It all starts from 1 Uma in the sub legacy. So don't worry about the affinity rating of its parents, but avoid triangles. Avoid triangles because it just makes it hard to raise them. Step 1, train that Uma repeatedly with guest legacy Umas that have good sparks for the easiest time raising stats and the easiest time clearing URA. So what are the guest legacy Umas? So if I go over here, let's say I want to raise vodka, I have to select a legacy. I can either use any of the veteran Umamusume that I raised, or I can click this guest tab and I can choose these better ones that I can find on PvP rankings. I can find online from like the Discord. I can friend these people and just use their Umamusume instead. And look at that. I have double circle rating with this Agnes Tachyon. And Agnes Tachyon herself has 3 stars in stamina, which is very desirable. And so this will allow me to go on a path to making my first 9-star Umamusume because I have 3-star in stamina and I have 3-star in speed. Not as desirable, but sometimes it's fine. It's better than nothing, right? So this will help me make my first 9-star blue Umamusume. Step number 2, once you get 1 3-star blue spark in a desirable stat in Uma A, then you're going to go to a different Uma B, until you get a 3-star blue spark in another desirable stat. Step 3, now you're going to train an Uma C, a different Uma from Umas A and B, as its legacy until you get a 3-star blue spark in a desirable stat. So that's where I'm at right now with vodka, right? I have 1 3-star parent and I borrowed a 3-star parent from a friend, and now I'm going to be on my way to make a 9-star vodka who could be a 9-star parent to someone else. After that's done, congrats! You now have a 9-star blue spark Uma that can help you raise any other Uma more easily. And at that point, if we don't already have other scenarios, if we don't have the 2.0 anniversary patch, I would start planning Affinity Loops, since it'll be easier to farm stats, farm wins, and farm the URA scenario white spark. Alright, so that was a long video, but I do want to make sure I give my credit. So again, the sources are in the description below. But if this guy was helpful to you and you play the Japanese version, Crazy Fellow, who is the writer of that doc over here, Crazy Fellow's Parenting and Gene Guide, has a lot of good information in here, more than I could cover in a single video. He asks at the end of his document to follow him if you happen to play the Japanese version. Really cool game with just how in-depth it is and how many things there are. If you're thinking like, oh, it's just a huge RNG fest, you're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong. But there are ways to kind of get the best RNG. And for me personally, that is where I find a lot of the fun. So leave a like and sub if you guys enjoyed this video, if you learned anything. And thank you so much for just blowing up my past videos on Umamusume. I'm working on more campaign runs so that I can help you learn how to do gold chip, learn how to run King Halo, etc. And yeah, I'm just really appreciative of everyone watching, because this is a game I've privately enjoyed pretty much for a very long time, and it's just really cool to see a lot of people into it. So yeah, just thanks again. I'll see you on the next one.